Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Monday Night Live. If you are listening to this on the replay, again, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Laura Betts. I am founder and facility director of Hyperbaric RX here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I do lives every Monday at 6 o'clock, and we cover a huge list of topics. And tonight's topic is talking about a very common overlooked root cause, specifically talking about understanding radiation, specific absorption rates. We have devices all around us that emit radio frequency. And our body is a energetic being. Our tissues absorb these radio frequencies. And there are safe absorption rates, or what is deemed to be a safe absorption rate. And it is very, very overlooked. So I'm going to tell you my personal story and a little bit more about some of the modalities that I practice and why they practice. Just like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, everything that we do here is something that I have a very, very personal narrative with. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And of course, we have a ton of topics to talk about. Last week, we answered a very common question: how high do our hyperbaric chambers go? And this is a question that used to be a much more simple answer than it has become in the market today. I encourage you to check that video out on the replay and arm yourself with some knowledge. Because it's not just about hard and soft chambers anymore. There is a little bit more to it. Again, tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my personal experiences. And I've done a talk earlier on where I talked about how I got into hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I was a mixed gas diving instructor for many years. I ended up with my own personal narrative, and hyperbaric oxygen was a powerful, powerful intervention for me in restoring and rebalancing my health. And it is the reason why I founded this facility. And Hyperbaric RX is an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility. There are some really, really big differences there. Not all hyperbaric facilities are the same. I've talked about that, and it's becoming more true than ever. I did another consult today with someone who is really declining quickly, and they are wasting their time being treated without an oxygen source. And the consult, again, this is the way this goes. It came to me that the person isn't responding to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. This is very interesting. We don't understand why they're not responding. There should be a clear-cut case, et cetera, et cetera. And essentially, upon coming to find out, the quote facility, and I'm using that term a little just loosely, the place they're going is not using any oxygen. They're actually making them worse. There's an infectious component to this particular specific person's condition. So a lot of big differences between ANDI certified hyperbaric facility. And how we became an ANDI certified hyperbaric facility came from my diving background. But how we became the first and only holistic hyperbaric center of its kind in the world, combining some modalities, well, I'm going to talk about that tonight and tell you a little bit about my personal story. And again, everything we do here at Hyperbaric RX is not only something to help you heal, detox, and rebalance your health naturally, but it is literally something that I am alive because of. I believe in this from the core of my being, and I have direct personal experiences with it. So super, super powerful. And it's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this. So again, let's get into our topic and talk a little bit about radiation and talk about symptoms of radiation poisoning. That sounds so serious. That sounds really quite dangerous. And it's interesting because, again, we've normalized something that's really not very normal. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened to me. So again, and I've talked in an earlier video about how in my early 30s, a tumor the size of a golf ball came out of absolutely nowhere in my right breast. And it was it was a few months. It was very aggressive, from nothing to, again, I remember the doctor's hand on it, and his hands were like this on the side of my breast. It was a very real experience. And in that situation, again, I was really blessed to not have health insurance, because if I would have had health insurance, I would have done a traditional approach. I was not a holistic practitioner. I was not a board certified holistic health practitioner like I am now. I was not just finishing up my PhD in holistic medicine like I am now. I just didn't have the information at the time. So the fact that hyperbaric medicine was able to take that tumor larger than a golf ball and reduce it to nothing in less than 80 sessions over the course of a few months was pretty magical. And that was, again, what led me to find this clinic. Now, I've talked in another video that I've also struggled with my weight. And at one point in my life, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am right now. So I'm a pretty good health coach. And if you've got some weight loss goals, well, I really have a firsthand perspective there. And I'm someone who's done it, and I'm someone who lives it. So at that point in my life, I was much, much heavier. So on the other side of handling the tumor in the breast and rebalancing my health, I said, hey, I really want to get in shape. And I started wearing a smartwatch. And I said, I've never had my diet in order. I've always had, if my diet was good, my exercise wasn't good. And in just putting all of this together, I was able to essentially get motivated. And I said, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm really going to reach some health goals. And I didn't know at the time about specific absorption rates. And this was a really, really interesting thing, because to have come so far and then to have my health basically fully crash while I'm trying to get healthy was quite an experience. And I was missing a lot of information. And this is one of the most overlooked root causes, and it blew me away. So all of our devices have something called a specific absorption rate. And what we're talking about is the radio frequency. And the radio frequency affects us. So our laptop, our cell phone, our smartwatches, our tablets, our lights, our outlets, our Wi-Fi, electrical lines, radio frequency floating through the air. All of these energy affects us. Humans are very much energetic creatures. Our nervous system is organic wiring. So specific absorption rates, theoretically, they've done testing to make sure that this is safe and this is safe and that's safe. But the problem is that none of it takes anything into cumulative account. So let's talk about the smartwatch I was using. So it has two different ratings. So if the watch is against your head, the safe absorption rate limit is 1.6 watts per kilogram averaged over 1 gram of tissue. This is the measurement that they do. So they do watts per kilogram is how they measure this, and basically how they determine what the body can handle. Now, that's also an important piece of information, because guess what? Kids are a lot smaller. So the exposure to a child, when a baby with a thinner cranium, their skull is thinner, their weight, their body mass is smaller. So when they're sitting there with one of their devices a couple inches from their face, there is a limit here. The specific absorption rate is an issue here. So this watch, this smartwatch that I'm wearing, if it's attached to my head, right up against my head, then the safe limit is 1.6. And some countries are a little higher, they're 2.0. But ready for this? On the wrist, it's allowed to be almost double the international limit, and more so in relation to the standards that we're using here in the United States. And I was training, and I was getting symptoms of radiation poisoning because I was wearing my watch all the time, and I was having trouble getting up because I had a lot of fatigue. I was really tired all the time. I was having trouble sleeping. I was grumpy. I was irritable. I was apathetic, even though I was supposedly reaching all these goals and I had accomplished all of this. Difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory, hard retaining and learning. My headaches were worse than they had ever been. And I don't get headaches anymore. But at the time when all of this is going on, I'm dying. I'm getting nausea, vomiting, upset stomach. These are all symptoms of radiation poisoning, and they are very, very commonly overlooked root causes. Now, these specific absorption rates are based on one device. So when you're sitting there with your phone and your tablet and your smartwatch and your laptop, it's all of that together. And some of these devices, they have cellular, they have Bluetooth, they have Wi-Fi. Each one of those is producing its own radio frequency. So when you combine them together, and I was sleeping every night with my Apple Watch on, with the cellular on, the Wi-Fi on, and the Bluetooth on. And I happened to sleep like this. And in addition to these difficult symptoms, in addition to being absolutely exhausted all the time, in addition to being having trouble concentrating and problems with memory and headaches that are just doubling me over, the sides of my gums start to bleed, and I end up with all sorts of tissue damage. Because one of the things that radiation exposure does is it damages mitochondria and changes the structure of DNA. So I have all of this right up against the side of my face, and I'm pulsing the side of my face all night. I also got really, really scared because the area where my tumor was is on the lower right portion of my breast. And any sensitivity to that area, admittedly, it perks me up. It makes me pay attention. So here I am sleeping like this and sleeping like this with something that has an SAR limit of double, more than double what it's supposed to be up against my head with just one frequency. This is not taking into account the cumulative. And this is a huge issue with radiation in general, because again, all of these specific absorption rates are based on a single device, a single use, a single exposure. And then again, using the example of the watch, well, if it's on your head, it's 1.6, but if it's on your wrist, it's 4.0. So they're assuming your wrist is out here. What happens when you're sitting here like this with your smartwatch on? Basically, we're baking our brain. We're cooking our brain. So what does radiation, where do you get it from? Cell phones, laptops, computers, Bluetooth applications, video games, anything with Wi-Fi is technically emitting a radio frequency. And again, this little bit and this little bit and this little bit, but when you start to add it all together, and no one is taking cumulative effects into account. When you fly on the airplane, you have radiation exposure because you're closer to the sun. Our sun produces radiation. So people that are spending a lot of time it's with sun exposure are closer to it. Radiation for pilots is really common. I have a lot of cases of pilots that are getting heart palpitations and heart flutters, and it's actually coming from the radiation exposure. And we need to handle the radiation. It's absorbed into the tissues, and we need to effectively detox it out, essentially, limit exposure. And then we need hyperbaric oxygen therapy to repair the mitochondria, to repair the tissue damage. So radiation, one of the big things is it weakens the thyroid, and that causes low energy. It causes weight gain. It can cause hair loss, depression. And that's a big issue, especially when you consider, again, think about kids. Think about kids with weight issues, and they're sitting there on their iPad all day with the iPad just cooking their thyroid all day long. So the idea that the device could be causing this issue is very, very commonly overlooked. And most outside of holistic practitioners, it's pretty much ignored. Now, one of the other things that radiation does is it opens the blood-brain barrier to metals. So our body has this really neat protective mechanism called the blood-brain barrier, and it essentially stops our brain from getting direct blood supply. Now, that's one of the reasons why hyperbaric is so great in healing brain injuries. And I've talked about some other issues on how the blood-brain barrier affects neurological repair. When we have radiation exposure, it makes it easier for toxic metals to cross the blood-brain barrier. And that adds a whole other environmental issue. That adds a whole other problem to the scenario. It also allows metals to be pulled into the brain through the teeth. So if you have dental fillings, if you have amalgams, now this is becoming less and less common, but one of the problems with age-related dementia and many of these cognitive issues, what they're calling Alzheimer's, which is really type 3 diabetes, it's not correct. Many of these cognitive issues have radiation as a component, and it's causing the amalgams, the metals in the dental work, to be pulled into the brain as a consequence of the tissue damage, as a consequence of the damage from the radiation. So very commonly overlooked. Elderly people, right? They pop themselves in front of the TV. They're apathetic. They have difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory. They may have more likely to have amalgams, more likely to have dental fillings. And then here we go. So it allows a little bit more to cross and then misdiagnose. They're saying that this is an age-related cognitive issue that's genetic and there's nothing anyone can do about it, when in fact there's an awful lot we can do about it. And it's not age-related genetic at all. It's an unaddressed root cause from a combination of environmental exposure causing mitochondria damage. And the root of all disease is some kind of lack of oxygen from some kind of mitochondria damage. And again, I've talked about Roadmap to Health and talked about some of the different benefits there. Now, again, radiation changes the structure of DNA. When mitochondria becomes damaged, the cells are no longer able to do their job. It opens the doors for toxins. The toxins allow more mitochondria damage, and now the immune system can't function, and it opens the doors to pathogens. And we end up with this vicious circle. The immune system can't fight the bad guys, and the bad guys keep getting in and damaging the soldiers even more, damaging the immune system. There are studies that demonstrate an increase in brain tumors from radiation exposure, and there are studies that demonstrate an increased risk of cancer from radiation exposure. So we really do want to think about this. And again, in our day-to-day life, we are being bombarded. We have so many devices. And I am grateful for quantum nutrition testing, because without quantum nutrition testing, the fact that I was being affected by radiation would not have come up in traditional diagnostics. It came up. I stopped wearing the smartwatch. I practice what I preach and have a natural health program that was helping me to detox the radiation. And I made some changes to avoid radiation in my life. Now, if someone would have told me that I would be sitting here talking about this, I really wouldn't have believed it. It really does sound very tinfoil hat. I get it. I really do. But again, the tissue damage that I experienced was not something light. It was a big deal. The health crash that I experienced was really, really scary. I thought I was going to die. I thought I didn't do it after all. I didn't beat it after all. And it was all caused by overwearing a device. Again, the specific absorption rates speak for themselves. So I encourage you to educate yourself about the specific absorption rate. Sit right now, add up the devices in your room right now and measure the specific absorption rate that you're being exposed to. So how do you prevent it? What can you do about it? So the first thing is you want to keep your device distant from your body. You know, I am guilty of this myself. A lot of us, we keep our phones in our pocket, in our bra, in our back pocket. And unfortunately, when we're doing that, we are directing radiation, we are absorbing radiation into the tissue, and we're doing so directly. Again, they've done studies on this where you can see the radio frequencies being absorbed, and they use imaging, different kinds of imaging, and you can see the areas on the diagnostics. It's pretty scary. So again, you want to keep them distance from you. You don't want to be putting them on your person and keeping them on your person for long periods of time. You want to keep them away from your face. I realize that sounds crazy, but you want to try and limit and keep your cell phone away from your face. Yeah, I use speakerphone. I'm that person, but it is a way to help prevent some of it. Again, I encourage you to look at some of those testing that they've done where they use different types of thermal imaging to actually measure the radio frequencies being absorbed. One of the other things that you can do is you want to limit the conversation. Again, we do have other media that is a little less, produces a lower specific absorption rate. In this case, the laptop is producing a little bit less, and I am able to be a little further away from it. So using Skype, using FaceTime on your longer conversations can be fun. Plus, you get to see their face. That's always nice. Laptops, you do not want to keep your laptops on your body. When your laptop is on your body, again, the radio frequencies, all of the output is being absorbed by our tissues. We are energetic beings. It's very interesting that our tissues are capable of doing this. You also want to make sure that you don't sleep with your cell phone near your body. A lot of people do the cell phone under the pillow. And remember, there's Wi-Fi, there's cellular, there's Bluetooth. All of that is happening. The phone is connecting automatically to the towers throughout the middle of the night. You may want to consider turning the Wi-Fi off at night, turning the routers off at night. You definitely want to keep devices away from kids. Again, they've really normalized the exposure. And children, they have their body mass is much smaller. Their cranium is much smaller. Their skull is thinner. They are more affected than adults. I see it. And some of this glazed over TV addiction that they're experiencing is thyroid damage, mitochondria damage, tissue damage from the specific, from the radio frequencies being absorbed. Selenite works well, and some people do like that. It's a stone, and some people have very good luck with it. And one of the things that you can do, I'm just grabbing a piece of it. I think I have a piece here somewhere. Okay, there we go. So this is an example of a piece of selenite. And selenite, some people do feel comfortable with it. And then there are some things that are more fancy, but there is something to be said for this. And I do really feel there's something to it. Again, I know that this sounds so tinfoil hat, but I really do feel that way. And I'll also share with you something else that I work with. And there are devices that are harmonizers. And it makes the radio frequency, it makes it a little easier on the body. And these are, this is one of the ones that I use. This is by a company, and I have used this product for a few years now. And when I was going through my journey, once I realized what was happening, I did realize that I was feeling a lot of energy. And I was actually able to go, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And again, I realize this sounds, I feel the difference. And this is one of the larger units. It's a very cool thing. And when I'm working on these devices, when I'm doing this, I do have this in the stand. Sometimes I have smaller ones that I can wear on my body. I'll even put it in my pocket. But I do feel it's a difference. When I walk into the hyperbaric equipment room with it and without it, I really do feel a difference. And there is some science behind it. And this is one of the few that I found that has some decent research. So I really do use it. It is a product that I personally use. There's a couple of different versions of it. I have them on my devices for what little bit it's worth. I've purchased them for family members. I feel that strongly about them, and I have had some clients with some good results with it. So I did give you a discount code in there for it. And again, it is something I believe in, and I encourage you to do your research. We can also go ahead and test you out on it here. And again, if it wasn't for quantum nutrition testing, I wouldn't have found it. And I would probably still be struggling, assuming I would have a practice at all. Again, my health was really crazy, and hard to believe that it was because I was overwearing and overexposing myself to a smartwatch. So I hope I gave you some good info. And if you are struggling with symptoms, if you think you may be dealing with some radiation, come on in. One of the techniques, one of the modalities that I combine with hyperbaric oxygen therapy is something called quantum nutrition testing. And again, I believe in this. My health is a direct result because of it. I see miracles every day because of it. It has dramatically improved our hyperbaric outcomes. I'll be speaking at a conference in December called Quantum Leap. And the link for Quantum Leap is also, I'll make sure that I put that in the comments for you guys as well. I do encourage you to come on out and join us there. So as a result, we offer programs to naturally support and rebalance the body using physician-grade whole food supplements, homeopathy, herbs, and special products using carbon technology. And I combine that with the hyperbaric oxygen therapy to help your body detox, heal, and repair. So if these radiation symptoms seem familiar, if you have a child that's struggling, if you've done every test under the sun and no one can figure out what's coming on, reach out to us, schedule a consultation with us. I've talked about what's involved in our consultations in some earlier videos that I've done, and we really want to hear how you're doing and hear what's going on. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope I gave you some good information on protecting yourself from radiation and some tips and tricks that you can implement to make some differences in your world. So as always, my name is Laura Betts. I am the founder of Hyperbarics RX, and I am the Oxygen Lady. If you're listening to this again on the replay, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, safe and happy diving. See you next week.